Hi everyone, Olivia Reiner here for Packers News, joined by Pete Doherty, and we are outside of Lambeau Field where the Packers were about to take on the Detroit Lightning, oh my goodness, Lions. Can you tell I'm a hockey fan and that Lions and Lightning get confused in my head? But there's no Lightning, there are Lions, and there are Packers, and they will be playing in the stadium behind us tonight to become king of the NFC North, at least for the time being. Both teams looking to duke it out. They're right at the top of the standings right now in the NFC North, and tonight is the battle of all battles.
Yeah, if the Packers win 3-0 in the division, that's a great start because all the tiebreakers start with head-to-head and division records. So it's big.
But can they win without Davante Adams? That was the big question last week as the Packers headed to Dallas to play the Cowboys, and the answer was yes. They were able to do it, especially with Aaron Jones with 4 rushing touchdowns, 182 all-purpose yards. Can the Packers rely on Aaron Jones to have the same night, or are they going to need to look elsewhere for offensive production?
You know, the Lions might do more to take it away than Dallas did, but my kind of off-the-cuff thinking is that it could be more like the Philadelphia game then, where Philadelphia took away the run, but the Packers still moved the ball up and down the field. It's tough to take away both when you have both a good back and an upper echelon quarterback. Patriots have a coordinator who learned from Bill Belichick, so we'll probably see a lot of what Belichick did against the Rams in the Super Bowl, and everybody else has been doing to the Rams since then with 6-man fronts. But yeah, if they shut down Jones, they still got to cover guys, and you know, when you're playing against Aaron Rodgers, that's one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yep. So guys, let's start by before we take some of your questions over on Facebook, which we love always hearing you guys in the chat. Make sure you're heading over there. If you have a question for us, we're also live on Periscope and YouTube. So wherever you are, wherever you're watching us, thank you. Wherever in the world you're watching us, I know we always say this, but it is cool to hear where you guys are from.
Yeah.
We've literally, I think we should actually, you know what we should do? We should get a map and start writing down. That would actually be a lot of work. You know, there's a lot of you out there.
It would be a lot, but we could use it as the backdrop for in the office when we have to do the show from inside then.
Oh my gosh, Pete, a good idea
full of ideas. Well,
from you.
Don't be so shocked. Oh my God, that hurts.
One time I made fun of Pete on this live stream and someone called me rude in the chat, so I learned the hard way not to mess with Pete.
No, you don't. My 7 fans out there will really be upset.
Yeah, definitely back him up, guys, for sure. All right, so let's talk inactives for the Packers. Pete, we've started a new tradition. You've been the one to do the honors. I will allow you to read tonight's inactives for the Packers.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege. It's the people you would expect: Davante Adams, who's injured; Tony Brown, injured, hamstring; Cole Madison, he hasn't been active yet; Adam Pankey; Darnell Savage, who's injured; Robert Tonyan, who's injured; and Dexter Williams, who obviously is not caught up in the offense enough to get himself active ahead of Trey Carson.
So also worth noting that before the game tonight, the game hasn't even started, but just a couple hours ago, Evan Bayless, a tight end who was on the practice squad, was promoted to the active roster. So now with Robert Tonyan out, the Packers have 3 healthy tight ends on the roster, which is important. Bayless was on the practice squad, promoted to the 53-man roster. Then he was waived a few weeks ago, and then they brought him back onto the practice squad, and now he's been promoted yet again to the active roster. What a roller coaster.
Yeah, life in the NFL. That's happened to some guys who ended up being really good players too, so it's not uncommon early in guys' career. Did you notice who they cut?
They cut Tremon Smith.
They did. So I guess Darius Shepard is returning both punts and kickoffs, I would have to assume, tonight.
Yes, so the Packers picked up Trey Smith on waivers. He was released from, I believe, the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Yes, it was the Chiefs. And he was primarily their kick returner. He's also a cornerback, but I guess the Packers didn't like him enough to keep him around on this roster. Perhaps he wasn't versatile enough for them.
I wonder if they already milked him for information about the Chiefs before they cut him.
You would think maybe.
You would think. I don't know if they normally would have waited till the week of the game or just before that to do it, or if they already did it. But if they didn't, chance is gone.
Now Jim Ozarski, our colleague, he made a comment to me earlier in the press box, and he said that perhaps the Packers would be interested in bringing him back, maybe to the practice squad. Apparently he's still practice squad eligible. I don't know his entire history off the top of my head, but assuming that he is practice squad eligible, maybe he's a guy they'd consider bringing back.
Yeah, actually, and there's a lot of truth in that. And he did show some explosiveness as a return guy. I don't know what kind of cornerback he is, but he's got a lot more speed than Darius Shepard. But the Packers obviously felt that having a tight end, having that third tight end, which makes a lot of sense because otherwise if you get an injury, then your whole 2 tight end package is out the window.
All right, guys. So I am in the Facebook comments right now that have just frozen. So I'm going to. Oh, Chase has a fun. Let's start off with a fun one. Why not? It's frozen on your question, Chase. So I will take this one first. Who wins in a fight, Danny Vitale or Mark Murphy?
In a fight?
I would say Danny Vitale. I would
put a lot of money on Danny Vitale over Mark. Mark Murphy's what, 62 or 3?
If you're
talking, yeah, I think Mark Murphy's might be 63. Yeah, that's. I don't think that would be a fair fight.
No, not at all. I would also choose Vitale. Chase, you are always full of fun questions. I've seen some of your comments before. I appreciate the ability to be lighthearted. We love some fun stuff. Joel wants to know, is Tim Williams in the lineup for tonight? And he was not on the inactives list, so no. He is in the lineup. I would expect to see him, so he is an outside linebacker that the Packers picked up off of waivers from the Baltimore Ravens. I would expect to see him play on special teams, as I believe he did last week.
Yeah, and maybe they rotate him in there for a couple dime snaps, but I don't know, with Fackrell healthy and the starters at Smith plus the first-round draft pick, I don't know. Somebody have to get hurt, I think, for him to get in the game as an outside linebacker.
I would have to agree with you. Pete, Aaron asks, any thoughts on Jimmy One Hand Graham? Is that his new nickname? Well, he's been on the injury report. However, I don't think his hand has been an issue as of late.
No.
So that's good for Jimmy. Hopefully he has 2 hands for tonight's game. But what did you think of his performance last week against the Cowboys? He had a couple of receptions for a handful of yards, didn't do anything mind-blowing. I would say that his best game so far is still the game against the Bears in week 1.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for him. Well, I'm sure he'd like to be able to beat that and to stay on pace with that. But what we know of Jimmy Graham, that was a very good performance from him. Do you expect to see him have a similar night, a big night, given the fact that, once again, Davante Adams is out?
You kind of have trouble seeing him have big games. He's just like, you think back to training camp. He made 1 play down the field in training camp. We were at all the practices. It was 30 or 35-yard touchdown. Everything else was short. I think it was Tom Silverstein in one of his stories in the last week basically pointed out, and I think he's exactly right, that they just have to adjust to who he is and just work him short over the middle, short stuff, let him post up if you get close to the goal line. He's just not the same guy that he was when he was an all-pro player, a few years ago.
So Eric Baranchik, friend of the show, has a question.
Very good friend
of
the show. He was asking, he just texted and said, when are you going on? And you were about to flip the switch.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Hello, Eric. He asks, is this the night that 12 goes off? Aaron Rodgers, he has been okay the last several games, especially the last game. He said it was one of his best games. But if you look at the stats, which in theory maybe the Packers shouldn't be entirely obsessed with the stats. After all, they're winning, right? And he admitted that they're winning. As long as they're winning and they're finding different ways to win, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
However, is that sustainable? Does he need to get back on track and have
I thought he played really well last week, and the difference between the 85 rating he had and being over 100 was if 2 of those 2-yard touchdown runs were 2-yard touchdown passes, his passer rating shoots up about 25 or 30 points. So that's a little bit of a misnomer sometimes. Played a really good game. I know Eric is asking that question because he thinks this is the game where he really breaks out.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. He also says that you need to get a hat. I'm supposed to get you a hat. I don't have a hat to give you.
Is he saying cover up that face and head as much as possible, or is he worried that I'm cold? I think it's the former.
Ooh, might be.
Yeah.
It could be a little bit of both. That's okay. Let's see what we got. Robert asks, how long is Davante Adams expected to be out for? It's a good question.
Have you heard anything?
No, but we've speculated. Do you guys accept speculation? Because Ryan Wood speculated a couple of live streams ago. Might have been yesterday. Honestly, the days are starting to blur together a little bit. But he thought that perhaps Davante would be ready to go by Kansas City. No sense in rushing him back anytime soon.
I would think 3 to 4 weeks, so that's missing 1 more game after this one. I would think 3 to 4 weeks, maybe. The Kansas City game might be out too, because the one thing with those sprained toes, it's a pretty serious injury, and you don't want it coming back and never going away. Otherwise, this will still be bothering them, and maybe even force them to sit out in December, and if they're playing in January when you absolutely have to have them. So, it's especially if they keep winning, it's easier to to sit him.
Yes, let's see what we got here. Matthew says, which lesser-known receiver do you expect to show up against the Lions? Lesser known, it's always hard for me to tell who is lesser known on this team. I think I'd expect to see Marquez Valdes-Scantling have a bigger game, especially if the Detroit Lions, their secondary is known for doing more man coverage and one-on-one sort of things.
Yeah.
And as we know, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is very fast. I don't know if I would consider him.
He's very tall also.
He's tall and fast, and I think is a better athlete suited for winning those types of matchups. Yeah. But I don't know if he's lesser known necessarily. So perhaps that's not non-obvious
you have to categorize him as a more known guy at this point compared to everybody else. I kind of think with going against in these games without Adams, it could almost be anybody who could have a bigger game. Even who knows? Shepard might get some snaps, or Kumaro hasn't played a ton, but he's playing more now. Maybe he has several of those intermediate catches that he caught a lot of in the preseason. I think it could be anybody, and whoever is getting open. I think Robert Tonyan would have been a good candidate. Matt LaFleur even said he wanted last week to get him the ball. They had some things designed for him, and he got hurt early on that really nice catch he made on the sidelines, and now is not playing this week.
Craig wants to know. Okay, so Matthew, sorry, before we jump to Craig, excuse me. He specifies Shepard, Kumaro, Lazard as being one of the.
Guys. I guess if I had to pick one of those three, I'd go with Kumaro.
All right.
Yeah, that's just. But we're all just guessing here.
He had a good block. The receivers have been used, especially the lesser-known receivers, if that's the category we're putting them in, have been used for more blocking purposes in the games.
That's it.
Last week.
And you don't want to minimize the importance of that. That helped Jones on a couple of those longer runs. It's something Jordy Nelson always did really well, and that the more you do, the more you help your team.
Yeah, contributing in different ways. Let's see. So the question that I was about to answer. Okay, so Craig. Hello, Craig. With as much success as the run game had last week, will it be more of a run or pass game focus tonight? That's a good question.
Those things are fluid. I would think the plan would be heavy run, but if they're getting shut down and a lot, bringing up the safety a lot, stack lines of scrimmages and stack boxes, then you have to throw the ball more. It could be like last week, or it could be like the Philly game. The problem is if you're Detroit, you still have to pick a poison, and the running back can beat you and the quarterback can beat you.
So if my memory serves me correctly, I believe that currently the Lions defense is allowing 4.8 yards per carry, and I think that falls in the bottom.
Yeah, I think the average is in the really low fours. So that's not real hot.
So perhaps the Packers can exploit that tonight. They haven't. Again, I believe this is correct, and this is something that our colleagues wrote over on PackersNews.com. I believe Tom Silverstein wrote this. But the Lions have not allowed under 100 rushing yards in any of their games. They've only allowed over 100 rushing yards. So anyway, run defense. Also struggling over there.
One of the things that could be an indicator if the Packers end up running the ball, 25 to 30 times, that's probably a really good sign for the Packers that things are going well. Even if they're not piling up tons of yardage, it still means you're getting first downs, you're keeping drives alive. That would be a really good sign for the Packers. It's not. I don't know if it's a must, but it would. If they're near 20 by the fourth quarter, they're probably having a pretty good game.
All right. Mark wants to know: are the Packers and Aaron Rodgers going to play well in this weather? It's actually pretty decent right now.
Yeah, it's
you
not
might
bad.
Notice I'm not wearing any sort of jacket. Well, I'm wearing a blazer, but that doesn't count. Pete over here is wearing a jacket.
I've got my fall jacket on. It's not cold. It's a little cool, but it's actually a perfect night for football if you're out there running around and playing. I wouldn't think the cold would be a factor at all.
Do you think it'll be a factor for J.K. Scott at all? How much will the colder weather impact the ability for the ball to fly in the air a little bit?
So what did Sean Menenga say? You were there at the press conference, the coaches? Because somebody asked him, is there some kind of formula for
that would be Ryan Wood.
How many yards you lose for X amount of temperature drop, and he said no one that he knows of has done this study, so he didn't know. All he knows is the colder it gets, the less far the ball flies.
I told Ryan right after that press conference that he should commission someone to conduct that research.
I think he should do it himself.
I'm sure he's capable. I'm not going to say anything about that. Okay, moving on. Thank you for the question there, Mark. Let's see. We've got Brian wants to know, how about Matt LaFleur's plan to get the crowd more involved? Will Packers fans bring it tonight? There are a lot of Lions fans here, which isn't really a surprise. Detroit is, after all, in driving distance. So,
this is so much different than in the 90s and early 2000s. You hardly saw any opposing fans here ever, except for the Bears would have the most, and the Vikings were probably second most. But I'm just, wild guess, there would be maybe 5,000 fans for the other, for whoever they were playing. And now every road game there's a pretty decent chunk of visiting fans, just like when you watch games on TV or you go to a Packers game when they're on the road, there's a lot of Packers fans. It must be the Stub Hub, and the tickets are just so much more accessible now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Secondary market, gotta love it. Peter, last question for
Olivia?
me. That is my full name. Last question for me. Oh, I'm getting a call from Park Rapids, Minnesota. Live television, everybody. Pete, final prediction for tonight. What are you thinking heading into this game for the Packers?
I was thinking the Packers play really good pass defense, and they can rush, and they've got a couple ball hawks in the secondary. And Matthew Stafford is a really talented thrower, but he will take some chances, and they'll get some pressure on him, and he'll turn the ball over twice. And that could probably be the difference. So I said Packers 27-20. And you?
I said Packers, I believe 30-17 was my final score.
Oh, big.
So it is, yeah.
Packers big.
You're
all in all the time, aren't you?
I do. You know, if you're going to make a prediction, you might as well go a little crazy. 30-17 is not crazy, however.
It's a lot, though.
It is.
What was the spread? Was what, 4? 3 or 4? I think it was 4.
Somewhere maybe 3.5.
Yeah, it might have been. Well.
Anyway, all right, guys. My fingers are starting to get a little cold. Said I wasn't going to complain. I didn't say that, but I did say I was not wearing a coat, and I gloated about it. Yeah. But now my fingers are cold.
I think we should stay on for another half hour.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. I think it's time to be done. Guys, I will be back to wrap up the game inside of Lambeau Field after the game with Ryan Wood. So if you're up pretty late, it's going to be a little while after the game.
Past my bedtime.
Pete will be asleep in the press box. Ryan Wood and I will be down on the field right after locker room is over. So you're going to make sure you come back here. Packers News, whether you're on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, wherever, make sure you come back and chat with us. We would love to hear your questions. If you're not following us on all of our social media channels already, make sure you are. And also, just head over to PackersNews.com because we're going to have lots of content, lots of game details, whatnot, over on the website as well. Tom Silverstein's going to be doing his live blog soon. What time is it? 6 o'clock? We're probably in like 10 minutes or so. So once you're done here, go over to Tom and hang out with him. Perhaps I will take over during halftime. Hopefully not. I did that a couple games ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, it was a train wreck. Oh, it was bad. It's hard. There's just comments.
Honestly, I don't know how he can watch the game and do that at the same time. It's amazing, and it's a really good follow, so I highly recommend it.
It is. I actually always have it up on my computer as well during the game because I love to hear his analysis and his insight because it's really great. So make sure you're checking that out. All right, guys, thank you very much.